Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar,
حي على الصلاة.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar,
حي على الصلاة.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Once again, I rise, giving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the highest of praise, the highest of honors to his holy and divine prophet, Noble Ali. I extend those honors to the forerunner, the honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who did warn and stir up the nations. I give honors to the Moorish American standard, the red flag with the green 5-pointed star representing the highest principles that are known to man, which is love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. I also acknowledge the United Mercantile Trading Banner, also known as the American flag. I give honors to all Moorish Americans, both past, present, and future, who strive to promote this Moorish divine national movement by way of the Prophet's holy instructions and divine laws. I also give honors, I also want to extend those honors rather, to all organizations who also strive to promote the interests of Asiatics, also known as African Americans, Negroes, or people of African and indigenous descent living in America and all over the world. Islam? I give honors to Temple Number 19, the Office of the Grand Governor, the Lieutenant Grand Governor, the Chief Staff, the Admin Staff, and the mighty M19s who keep the peace. And certainly, last but not least, I give honors to you, the ills and bays, and our visitors, and sacred groves, because when man honors man, he honors our Father God Allah. Islam? Once again, all praise is due to Allah for having us here on another holy day evening, so we may continue to build on things that make us better citizens. Islam? Once again, my name is Rashid Ibn Haliym-Bey. I'm the chairman of the Moorish Science Temple of America, subordinate Temple Number 19. Once again, welcome, Ahlan Salin in Arabic. Is this your first time in the temple? Okay. How did you hear about Moorish Science Temple of America?
Actually, I heard about the Moorish Science Temple from my aunt, named the 13th Son.
Okay.
It's a YouTube brother who kind of spit a lot of knowledge to me.
Okay.
Basically, that was the first of me hearing. And then, actually, probably the first more with the feds I've seen was his brother here coming to the restaurant, and that's actually where I learned about this temple particularly.
What restaurant was that again?
I worked at Health Lessons for a while.
Health Lessons. Where is that at?
It's in the West End, right by the Goodwill, right?
Oh, Healthful Essence.
Yes, sir.
Got you. Wonderful food, wonderful
Yes,
food.
sir.
All right, indeed. What about you, sis?
As far as this temple as well, I was also introduced by a brother over there as well.
Okay, all right. So one of our members invited you. Praise
And as
Allah.
far as this time of day for the holy days meetings was from our brother yourself here.
Okay, praise Allah, praise Allah. Have you heard of Noble Ali before?
Yes.
Sir.
Okay, have you heard about Prophet Noble Ali?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Also by the 13th Son. He
13th Son, okay.
Yeah, and I did my own research to a certain extent.
Okay.
After that, the brother, he just introduced him to me, and then I read the Circle 7 Quran,
Okay.
and just from there, that's pretty much my extent of knowledge.
Okay. Okay. And what about you, sis?
As far as for Noble Ali, I was introduced by brother 13 son
Okay.
as well. But I have family members who were Moorish, but nobody really dove in deep as far as the realization that Noble Ali brought to us. So
Okay.
I'm grateful that that knowledge has been brought to me, so I can sure was willing to be a part of that even stronger. And like I say, brother 13 also helped us realize that we are more than what they call us for our names, and getting back to our nationalities, and even those names like the so-called being black. I just know I didn't resonate with that.
Okay. Islam. All right. So actually, I want to read something special for y'all. Maybe you've heard of it before, maybe not. But I like to read it every time I get a few newcomers in, and because it's very important. Like, to understand the plight of the so-called African American on these shores of America, Turtle Island, however you want. There's several different names for it, but the idea or the plight of the so-called African American, the so-called black person in America, is a very unique. It's not a special one, but it's unique because we are the only group of people who has gotten their whole identity stripped from them, their well-being stripped away from them, the essence of who they are and what makes them who they are. We've gotten that stripped away from them. And that was a process. And what I mentioned in one of our Holy Day meetings is that, contrary to popular belief, it wasn't a complex process. It was a process nonetheless, but it wasn't a context. It wasn't a complex process. So it doesn't need to be as convoluted as we may seem. So what we have in the conscious community is a journey with individuals such as yourself, such as myself, and the other brothers that are here, is trying to trace ourselves back to a time of existence where we were one with humanity, if you will. Does that make sense what I'm saying? The Honorable John Henrik Clarke said, when he talked about nationality, is that a people has to be, and I'm paraphrasing, they have to be recognized by way of their point of origin, their culture, and how they identify themselves. He also said that black tells you what you look like, but it doesn't tell you who you are. So that's something that we must hold important, that we must contemplate when we consider this idea of being a Moorish American. We consider this idea of being, of having a nationality. Do you know what nationality is?
I have a certain idea of it. Nationality, I guess, in my loose definition, would just be your ancestry to a certain extent,
okay,
or your point of origin.
Okay. What about you, sis? You have an idea of which nationality is?
I would say being a part of your bloodline and where your family and your history, your ancestors.
Okay. All right. Nationality contextually is defined as that quality of character which arises from a person belonging to a nation or state. And nationality also determines your political status. That's the textbook definition. But simply put, nationality is a shared ideal. A shared ideal. Why do I say that? I say that because, okay, we all have an image of ourselves. We all know how we want to be, right? We wake up in the morning, or when we go to bed, we have this concept of the person that we want to be, right? Okay? And so, being that we have this concept of the person that we want to be, I want to be this great brother or this great sister who does well for my community, who does this, that's wise, and this and that, so on and so forth. We begin to develop our personalities, or our personality, our how we dress, so on and so forth, how we engage with people. We begin to develop that based on the concept that we have of ourselves, right? I want to be this intelligent, intellectual brother that knows a lot about Kemet and Africa and all of that. So what do? You start reading a lot of books. You listen to lectures, so on and so forth. You look up how much it costs to take a trip to Africa, to Egypt, to Ghana, so on and so forth. You do all of that. You learn, right? So what happens if somebody else took on that idea? The same idea. What if somebody saw you walking one day, just like you saw that brother at Health for Essence, and you said, well, I like how you talk. I'm feeling how you talk. The way that you dress, I can relate to that. The information that you have, and most important, out of all of that, the way you carry yourself, I can apply that to my day-to-day life. I like that, and I want to adapt that. All right? Going back a moment, everything that you're doing before you met that person is developing your status in society. Whether or not you're good for having people hang around you, talk to you, get information from you, allow them to be in your circles. That is a status. You're developing a status. You're developing a way that people perceive you. All right, and that's the ideal. That is an ideal that you have. So what happens is when you deal with nationality is that you have that times so many things. Because what you do is you have an ideal of a group of people that says, I want to be a Moorish American. And what does that mean is that I will embody all things that relate to being Moorish, being the descendants of Moroccan born in America, and all things that pertain to peace, also known as Islamism. And I will follow this ideal because it will change the status or how people perceive me in the community, starting with how I perceive myself. So no longer will I perceive myself, I use it all the time, but it's so good. I'm not going to perceive myself as this chair that you're sitting in, as this object, because that chair is black. Sister, you are of a dark olive tone. Brother, you are of a light olive tone. The Moors and Asiatics are described as people of a light to a dark olive tone with woolly to wavy hair. All right? And we are not objects to be used and abused, and when we're no longer of use, we get thrown away. Because that's what happens to that chair. That's what happened when we were considered chattel property. Chattel means ownership. All right? Chattel means property ownership, to be exact. So we've been reduced as a human being down to somebody that can be monetized, if you will. And again, that was a process because they had to say, okay, well, how am I going to bring this person that we got from Africa? How are we going to turn him into intellectual property? How are we going to do that? And it was a process that took away your mind, your body, and your spirit. There is an analogy when you talk about the 3/5 human, and the analogy again is just that. But the idea is that, you know, since you're only 3/5 human, you know, the other 2/5, if you will, is your divine creed or nationality. That's a way to think of it. But you know, that's another story for another day. But not to get too convoluted, nationality is an idea that's shared by a group of people that determines your political status and your status in society, because you have determined that status in society. All right. So to make it even more simple, Moorish Americans believe in Father God Allah, and basically our way of relating to that Father God Allah develops our culture. All right, and our culture is based on how we decide we want to be a spirit and a part of Allah. It could be through, well, first and foremost, it has to be through recognizing that you're a spirit and a part of Allah. And then recognizing that if you're a spirit and part of Allah, you individually, that the person next to you is a spirit and a part of Allah. And that if you need to be respected, then that person needs to be respected, right? We're going to get to the pamphlet, the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America in a moment. But in the first few chapters, or the first 3 pages of the Moorish Science Temple, or the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, there's a saying: know thyself and thy Father God Allah, that you may learn to love instead of hate. And if you don't get anything out of these presentations by myself, by this brother Yosef Anfel Il, by our Grand Governor, our Grand Sheik Rashid Ibn Il, lead with the ideal of love and the mindset of love. All right? Because again, our Prophet teaches us how to learn to love instead of hate. And the idea of love and hate are 2 concepts of thoughts. They're not the actions. We think of it as actions. We can say, I love you, but that's just your mindset. You express your love, your adoration for someone by the things you do for them. You express all the things that you don't do for them. And the same thing with hating someone. Part of that process of turning us from human beings, people of Allah, to property, or slaves, if you will, is the fact that they made us hate each other. They separated the light from the dark, the house Negro and the field Negro. They made us hate our brothers and our sisters. Reduced the brothers down to just a mule or cattle. And told the sisters that you needed to take care of him as if he was your son. When we all know that men are the protectors and the providers. But men cannot succeed without their partner. The wife, the very word wife means sister. Husband means to till the soil. But you cannot till the soil and look after the soil without a partner. And that is your wife. That is your life partner, if you will. Islam?
Islam.
So, he separated the family. United we stand, divided we fall, if you will. Anytime you want to commit genocide of a race or a culture, the only thing you need to do is divide them. That's all you need to do. Let them think that give them the concept of individuality. I have to get yours and you got to get mine. I got to get mine and you got to get yours. Right? So, the fact that he made us hate each other, that we don't want to, that from this point, from that point on, that we don't invest in each other. We don't invest in our community. We barely invest in each other. There's so many instances of how other nations, how other cultures of people, how they invest in their own. Case in point, gas stations. I want you to think about this every time you step into a gas station. I went to a gas station on Auburn Avenue one day, and it was a fairly new gas station, and I went and I talked to the brother, and I said, man, this gas station, it showed it, you built it up very fast. I mean, for once it was just a building, and now, it is what it is. And he said, well, thank you, brother. It was a birthday present. I said, really? He said, yes, my father had given this to me as a birthday present. That's legacy right there. They solidify. See, the thing is that when we talk about nationality, that whole idea of developing a political status is developing your worth. So again, when you learn to love instead of hate, you realize that you have worth. And if you have worth, you begin to develop the things, you project the things that reflect your worth. Right? Y'all understand what I'm saying? Okay. Slaves. Going back to the word slaves. All right. First of all, we're not slaves because we're not Slavs. That's where the word slave comes from. It comes from Slavs. So when we talk about Czechoslovakia, so on and so forth, those are actually descendants of slaves. All right. We are descendants of Africans. Specifically, we are descendants of Moroccans and born in America. So that means that we carry a trait that goes beyond the history of or the existence of any other nation. All right? We, by race, are Asiatics. Why are we Asiatics? Because before the world was called Pangea, when it was that single landmass, it was called Asia. I'm not going to It was called Asia. That was written by our forefathers, coming from the Kabbalistic term Asiya, which is the word or the plane of manifest. So I don't want to throw so many things at you, but I want you to understand that this concept of having a nationality is not just saying that you are a Moor or a Moorish American. It is literally a way of life, because what we're looking to do is leave legacies for our children and so on and so forth. So the first thing that you have to do as a Moorish American is to proclaim. You have to make it known publicly that you are no longer referring to yourself as Negro, Black, and colored. How many of us, well, name the term African American, right? African American can't be an identity because you can't be two continents. All right? You can't be black because, as our prophet teaches, black according to science means death. What does that mean? When we look at the term Negro, because that's where black comes from the term Negro. And that is the Spanish of negro, which of course we know is black, right? But the term negro from the Spanish language comes from, or is a derivative of the Latin language, necro, which means death. Y'all follow me? And we're also talking about again, going back to the state of our well-being. Because when you're in a state of darkness, you're not growing. And if you're, and I'm saying that we know that, everything starts from triple stage darkness, so on and so forth. But it has to be nurtured. Saying that you're black means that you're not in the capacity of being nurtured. That you're forever that seed that's planted in the soil that's being neglected. While you have other seeds that's being planted and being watered and being cultivated and being harvested and so on and so forth. Right? These are the things that make other people thrive and we don't. But it has to start with within. Everything that we do starts from within. That self-hate that caused us to portray each other to the Portuguese and the Spaniards and the French and so on and so forth, that was an internal decision. That was something that snapped in ourselves individually and as a people that said, I want this man gone. And we can go into that a little later on. But once you proclaim, you have to be the message that you bring. There's a difference between being a Moor and a Moorish American. Our prophet Noble Drew Ali said that there's no cost for nationality. All right? However, to cultivate and develop your nation, there is a fee. There is a price. And ultimately, that price is death. It's sacrifice. And sacrifice means, what is it that you value the most within yourself? Whether it be time, finances, physical labor, intelligence, that you can contribute to the development of this nation as a whole. Right? Because are you from Georgia? Are you all from Atlanta, Georgia?
Sure.
Okay. So you're familiar with North River Hills, right?
North River, yes.
Yes, okay. You're familiar with Lawrenceville Highway,
Yes.
Doraville, all those places, right? All right. So let's talk about Lawrenceville Highway and Doraville. Have you noticed that that's like a Latin American / Korean community, right? Okay. Have you noticed as you drive along, what is it? Lawrenceville Highway, Beaufort Highway, yeah.
All the signs have all their different languages, and you can tell where you are just by reading.
Absolutely. So being that have you ever been to New York before? Anybody been to New York? Y'all been to Chinatown?
I've heard about it.
Okay. All right. So next time you go to New York, just like down here, you notice in Chinatown they have McDonald's. McDonald's is like the only thing in Chinatown that's in English. Everything else is in the Mandarin or the Cantonese language. They have a Chase Bank that's in their language. So what does that tell us? That they don't need the money of any other nation besides their own. That I'm gonna get this brother speak. I'm gonna let this brother speak.
Keep
going. But ultimately, within so many words, again, going back to the initial ideal of nationality, it's an ideal, and it's a shared ideal. And when you get a group of people that collectively share an ideal, that the status of a people begins to rise, versus you that try to get by or get over individually, that is actually depleting your status because you have nobody representing who you are as a collective. There's nobody that is within, that has a genuine interest in you as an individual. Because you as an individual, you're a tedious person. I'm a tedious person. but we can all agree that we need better schools, right? We all can agree that we need better grocery stores that, again, that can cater to our group, to our people, right? All right. We need to own some of these gas stations, right? All right. So all of that is predicated on sharing that ideal, because you're going to want for your brother or your sister what you want for yourself. All right. So before I yield the floor to this brother coming to the rostrum, to the podium, I'm going to read a article from Moorish literature. This is, again, part of the doctrine of the Moorish Science Temple of America, the Divine and National Movement. So I know I was jumping around, so I wanted to clarify. So yeah, Moor defines who you are. But being a Moorish American means that you are a citizen of this American society that belongs to an institution that cultivates who you are as a Moorish American. All right? So what happens is, and this is with all due respect to any individual that that studies under Noble Drew Ali and declares themselves to be a Moor, but as a Moor, that's just stating your birthright. That's stating your bloodline. So, you know, that's just like me saying that I'm from Ghana. You know, but what is that? What is me being from Ghana? What is that? What of use of me being from Ghana if I can't contribute to the interest and development of the Ghanaian society? All right, it's the same thing with being a Moor versus being a Moorish American. So you can wear your turbans, you can wear your fezzes, you can say Islam, you can learn your Arabic, but if you're not contributing to the institution that has an interest in developing future generations as long as yourself, then it's for naught. Naught means nothing. You'll be doing it in vain. So again, one of the first things we have to remember again is that piece of that ideal of love, because when you develop the principles of love, you develop the principles of doing things as a unit, collectively. All right. So that's what Moorish American means. That's what Moorish American means, that you're doing things as a collective. Being frank, being a Moorish American, being a part of the Moorish Science Temple of America doesn't mean that you give up your driver's license. Moorish Americans have driver's license. Moorish Americans have lawyers. Moorish Americans have license plates. Moorish Americans follow the law. Moorish Americans take care of their children. Moorish Americans take care of their husbands. Moorish Americans are family. Islam? Islam. So all of the rhetoric that you may have heard in passing about being a Moor, or about being a Moorish American, is quite the contrary. When you receive your membership card from the Moorish Science Temple of America, it says, "I am a citizen of the U.S. of A." Noble Drew Ali, the Prophet. So being a citizen means that you are a rightful member of society, meaning that you do have privileges, rights, and responsibilities of that's beholding to them as a citizen. All right. Anyone else that is not considered a citizen is considered an undesirable, and that means they are subjected to the abuses of those that consider themselves citizens. All right. Did I lose y'all?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Islam, brother. You doing all right? So, article in the Moorish literature called "What Shall We Call Him?" Again, the title of the article is "What Shall We Call Him?" from the Moorish literature. And it reads, "So often our various journalists find trouble in selecting the proper name for the Moorish American. Some say Negro, other will brand him raceman. Still another will call him Afro-American. And then come colored, dark American, coon, shine, the brethren, and your folks. It is indeed a hard matter to find something suitable for the various occasions where a title needs to be used. Is it that these people have no proper name? Did they have a national name? Did they have a national name when first brought to these shores in the early part of the 17th century? If so, what was it? Did not the land from which they were forced to have, did not the land from which they were forced from have a name. It now appears a good idea for those whose duty it is to write for the various journals to find out what the national name of the forefathers of these people was. Also look into the history of the founders of the civilizations and see who they were and where they stood in building the present civilization. Probably 2 hours in an up-to-date library would serve to relieve the strain of our men of letters. When the occasion presents itself for a title for these people, pardon me, the matter of the various names given to these 22 million people with all the colors of every race of the globe was an act of European psychology. So I want you all to keep that in mind. If you all have any writing material, if you have a phone, write down European psychology. That is very important. European psychology is also known as systematic white supremacy. It's also known as Western civilization or Western ideology. All right? They gave him a name, then defined it as something inferior to theirs. White, they define as a color of purity. Black, they say, represents everything of evil. The Negro, as they were called in this nation, have no nation to which they might look with pride. Where's the black nation? Tell me where the black nation is. Some would say the black nation is in Africa. But where does it specifically say that the black nation is in Africa? And that is another misnomer, because Africa is a continent that is filled with several nations, right? And neither one of them initially were called black. Once you had that, what do you call it? I'm sorry, my mind is slipping. The 1886. Somebody get me.
Berlin Conference.
Oh, Berlin Conference. Thank you. Once you have the Berlin Conference had separated Africa in that way. Africa wasn't divided the way that you see it in the time of our ancient forefathers. Thank you for jump-starting my memory. Let me finish it out. The history starts with the close of the Civil War, or more properly, with being forced to serve someone else. Thus is he and she separated from the illustrious history of their forefathers, who were the founders of the first civilization of the old world. This matter should be looked into with the hope of correcting. Islam?
Islam.
So, what this article is saying, simply put, is that the current state and the current name of the so-called Negro is not a benefit to him. Because again, going back to what John Henry Clark says, how can you define yourself based on what you look like? It has a significant part when you deal with the scientific, when you deal with melanin, or the biology rather, when you deal with the melanin, so on and so forth. But again, what describes you doesn't take you back to the Creator. In no way, shape, or form. When we look at our history, most of us, and raise your hand if you haven't been raised in, if you went to a private school. Okay, so everybody in this room had went to a public school or charter school or something similar to that. And were we taught African history? Were you taught that there was something that happened before slavery? Why is that? You should have the right. I mean, that's supposed to develop you. When we talk about civics or American history, you're saying that the integral part of American history was developed by those who have no history. Look at the contributions that our foremothers and our forefathers have done. And that in itself, Allahu Akbar, that is the blessing. But to technically make the statement that these people that contributed to one of the best nations in the world, the best countries in the world, have no point of origin. Like they found us in Africa just chucking spears with bones in between our nose, just dancing. And then we just came over here and just built up a nation. That is ridiculous. But it makes for a good story, right? So, our prophet, Noble Drew Ali, born in 1886, veiled to form in 1929. He was born Timothy Drew, and it is said that he traveled to India, Africa, Egypt, and was proven to be worthy of prophethood. And when he got those lessons, he was charged with bringing these lessons, the keys to civilization, to a group of people that have lost their civilization. Now, however you want to interpret that, this man took it upon himself to bring knowledge and wisdom to a group of people that had no full knowledge of who they are. We would, after slavery, the Reconstruction period, we were just salvaging stuff. And you had people that had an idea, but it wasn't of the whole. Like we knew that, you had W.E.B. Du Bois, you had Frederick Douglass, you had also the Freedmen's Bureau, you had those groups, you had, of course, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, you had Edward Blyton, you had a bunch of brothers and sisters that said that we have to raise ourselves up from just being considered slaves. And even though it was mentioned in passing, it was Noble Drew Ali who solidified the idea of nationality. It was always touched upon. It was always discussed. But Noble Drew Ali started the movement of returning nationality and divine creed to the so-called Negro in America, naming them or proclaiming them Moorish American. Islam?
Islam.
So I actually want to continue in reading an article from the Moorish literature. Because again, if anything, we want to make it clear about this organization. Going back to Buford Highway and North Druid Hills, you see in North Druid Hills they have a Zionist Jewish community. Like as soon as you hit Claremont and what's the other place? That area, you see synagogues like every other block. You see Jewish schools every other block. You see Hasidic Jewish families just walking up and down the streets as if they own that area, which they do. That Kroger that's over there, they have a kosher section specifically for that community. That's determining your political status. When you have corporations that are willing to compromise and devote a specific area to the community that's thriving over there, that's nationality. Another example of nationality, you have the Latin American Association of Atlanta, that's on Buford Highway, that corner of Buford Highway and Lennox Road. Thank you, sir. They used to have shuttles. So what would happen is that, of course, we know that MARTA didn't go as far as they needed to do, especially in those communities. So what they did is that you had this group of Latin Americans, and keep in mind the Latin communities as a whole, these people from Nicaragua, El Salvador, so on and so forth, but all together in Atlanta or in America, they're Latin American, right? So you have these different ethnic groups of people, but they got together and they appealed to that association. They said we needed shuttles, and so they got shuttles. And so where the martyr couldn't go, the shuttles would pick them up and take them to their destination.
That's right.
And then eventually they build up enough money, or the people in the Latin American community invested so much in that association, which also provides them with help with immigration, finding jobs, schools, ESL, all of those things within the interest of those people, so they can be upstanding citizens.
That's right.
They now have their own bus system.
That's right.
Beyond the martyr. So they went from shuttles to a bus.
Beautiful too.
And again, it's in their language. That is political status. That is quality of character, which arises from a person belonging to a nation or state. That is nationality. That is a shared ideal. Islam family? That's it's a powerful demonstration. So this, as Moorish Americans in the city of Atlanta and beyond, we strive to get to that level and beyond. But again, we got to do it together. I can't do it by myself.
That's right.
We can start in this barbershop, but we got to expand. We have to extend the learning, and again, such as Act 6 says, we have to teach our people their nationality and their divine creed. All right. So we have I have one more short article to read, and this is called. This article is "The Voice of the Prophet," and again, this is in our Moorish American Literature, which will be publishing another copy very soon. Islam. Voice of the Prophet. If you have race pride and love your race, join the Moorish Science Temple of America and become a part of this divine movement. Then you will have the power to redeem your race, because you will know who you are and your forefathers were. Because there is no unity, because where there is unity, there is strength. Together we stand, divided we fall. Come, good people, because I, the prophet, sent to redeem this nation from mental slavery, which you have now, need every one of you who think that your condition can be better. This is a field open to strong men and women to uplift the nation and take your place in the affairs of men. And I want to stop right there for a minute, because I had a discussion with one of my fellow brothers, if you will, and we were talking about the concept of the affairs of men. And politics is the affairs of men.
That's right.
Politics literally means the affairs of society. So, but when we hear that word, we often think about something that's separate from ourselves. But again, being a Moorish American, it is your responsibility to take your place in the affairs of men. So that means going beyond the streets and the neighborhoods and making sure that your ideals and your interests are being heard. But that also means putting a brother or a sister that comes from your yoke in those offices. All right? So it just doesn't stop at voting, because we do vote as well. But we also raise a brother and a sister up from our communities, from our societies, so they can properly represent us. Now, don't get me wrong, we have brothers and sisters that's doing their best right now, but how many of us knew Keisha Lance Bottoms? Who knew the current running governor, Stacey Adams? Stacey Abrams, okay. That was the shoe, Stacey Adams, right? Stacey Abrams. How many of us truly know her? Can we say, "Oh, I know Stacey from around the block. I used to see her. Eat at Health for Essence." Has she ever come to Health for Essence? Nobody's come to Health for Essence. But to have a brother or a sister that has come to Health for Essence, that's eating the food, that's been in the community, that's literally taking the time to clean up the trash in your communities, and is grown up, those are the people that you want, because they know what you need. So when we talk about taking the place in the affairs of men, it is a tier system. Some people may not want to go to become a governor, but we do need people that's part of the watershed. You know the current grade of Georgia water is a C+. Maybe I think it's a C-. So we don't necessarily have to have a governor or a secretary of state. We can just get somebody that can be over housing authority. That's the affairs of men. That's politics. So we need not be afraid of those words, politics, citizens, because that's what helps you to bring future generations and help them and help us grow as a people. Islam. So let me finish the last line. If the Europeans and other nations are helping me, why not you? It is your problem. The Negro problem is being solved only as it can, and that is by the Moorish National Divine Movement. If you have a nation, you must have a free national name in order to be recognized by this nation as an American citizen. This is what was meant when it said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all these things will be added unto you." Islam, family? So, simply put, you cannot be an American citizen without having a nationality. You cannot be an American citizen without sharing an ideal, a concept that connects you back to a point of origin, to land, and to a culture. This is what it means to be a Moorish American. This is what it means to be an Asiatic. Moorish American is your nationality, but Asiatic is your race, right? Before I yield the floor to our Grand Sheik, when you get a chance, research Der Judenstaat. Der Judenstaat. Let me write it down for you. Probably wrote it wrong. Der Judenstaat. The Jewish State. By Theodore Herzl.
That's right.
All right. There are many men that wanted to see their people come up from oppression. And this individual here was one of them. He's also the progenitor of what we now know as the Zionist nation, or the Jewish Zionist nation. Buford Highway. Not Buford Highway, North Druid Hills. That was because of this gentleman right here. All right? But the Jewish State is a pamphlet that specifically touches that touches base on the conditions of the people. It was almost like a proposal to other nations that we don't want to be oppressed. We have a nationality, we have an idea that we want to share, and we want to be relieved of all injuries, and we need your help. This is what the prophet was saying. Nationalities, they help each other. The reason that we are not being helped because we are not helping each other. So this is Theodore Herzl's first attempt, many attempts. But as you research him and you look him up, you'll see the process that he's went through to get to where he is now in Israel, which we know is a different situation. But our prophet is pleading to Moorish Americans and Americans alike that to support this Moorish Divine and National Movement, Moorish Americans and Asiatic first must support each other. And then once we support each other, people will see the value and understand what we're looking to do and assist us as well. But again, this is a field open up to strong men and women who seek to make their conditions better. Islam family? All right.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Hayya ala salah.